There is a wall in almost every house that nobody wants to deal with. Maybe it is the hallway that everybody brushes past on the way out the door. The kitchen wall above the stove where grease settles so slowly you stop seeing it. Or the bedroom corner where the light hits just right one afternoon and you realize the white is not white anymore. You have been meaning to wash it for months. You get a wet cloth, you press it against the paint, and you scrub. And the paint lifts. A thin, ghostly patch right there where you were working. The sheen gone. The color slightly different from everything around it. You stop. You wonder if you did something wrong, or if the paint was always that fragile, or if there is something about washing walls that nobody ever told you. There is, and that is exactly what this is about. The method costs almost nothing. The materials are already in your kitchen. And the reason nobody taught it to you has less to do with complexity and more to do with the fact that there is no product to sell you once you know it. I have been keeping painted walls clean for going on 5 decades. Farmhouse walls, plank walls, walls that saw wood smoke and garden dirt and muddy children and every variety of kitchen steam. My name is Annie Hemingway, and I grew up on a Blue Ridge Mountain homestead where we painted our walls once every few years if we were lucky, which meant keeping them clean was not optional. My mother washed those walls every spring and every fall without fail, and she never once put a scrub brush to them. I learned the right way early and the wrong way never, and that is worth something. Subscribe if keeping a home without buying a product for every problem is the kind of learning that sits right with you. There is more of it coming, and you will not want to miss what I have found for the months ahead. Drop your town or your state in the comments and let me know where you are watching from. I read every comment that comes through, and I am always glad to know where people are writing from. The rest of what I know about caring for painted surfaces, not just walls, but woodwork, doors, baseboards, the kind of surfaces people ruin without meaning to, is gathered in my handbook. The QR code is on the screen right now, and the link is sitting in the description below. That is the only time I will bring it up, so if it is useful to you, grab it now before we get into the teaching. Now, before I tell you what to do, I need to tell you what paint actually is, because if you do not understand this part, nothing else I say will stick the way it should. Paint on a wall is not armor. People treat it like it is, and they press hard against it. They use hot water, they reach for something abrasive when the stain does not come right away. But cured latex paint, which is what almost every modern interior wall has on it, is closer in nature to a thin layer of flexible plastic skin than it is to the hard coating people imagine. It bonds to the drywall or plaster underneath, and that bond is what holds the color and the sheen. When you scrub, you are not just cleaning the surface. You are creating friction against that bond. You are heating it slightly with your pressure. You are lifting the top layer of pigment and finish away from everything underneath it. And once that happens, no amount of touching up will restore it cleanly. The repair will always show. The common approach fails because it treats a dirty wall the way you would treat a dirty pan. Apply pressure, use heat, scrub until it gives. That logic works on cast iron. The repair will always show. It destroys paint. The sheen that goes dull from scrubbing does not come back. The sheen that goes dull from scrubbing does not come back. The patch that turns slightly lighter than the wall around it stays lighter. People assume the wall was cheaply painted or old, and sometimes that is true, but far more often the wall was fine and the cleaning method was the problem. What my mother understood, and what I am going to show you, is that paint does not need pressure to release dirt. It needs chemistry. Mild, gentle, everyday chemistry that loosens what has settled on the surface so you can wipe it away without touching the bond underneath. The wipe matters too. Not circular, not back and forth, not hard. But we will get to the motion in a moment because first, the materials. The chemistry your wall actually needs costs somewhere around $2 to $3 if you do not already have it, and most of you will already have it. White distilled vinegar. Warm water and a cloth, a small amount of plain dish soap. Not the concentrated kind, not the antibacterial kind, just plain dish soap. Not a sponge, not a scrubber, not paper towels. An old cotton cloth, the kind that used to be a dish towel or a flour sack or a piece of cheesecloth. Soft and non-abrasive, with enough give that it conforms to the wall rather than dragging against it. That is the whole supply list. $2 to $3, and most of it you have already. Fill a bowl or a bucket with warm water. Not hot, warm. Hot water softens paint faster than people realize, and on a wall that has seen a few years of wear, that extra heat is one more thing working against you. Warm is the word, the way a comfortable bath is warm. Into that water, add 2 tablespoons of white distilled vinegar. Then add 4 or 5 drops of plain dish soap. Not a squeeze, not a pour, just drops. Stir it gently. What you have now is a cleaning solution that is slightly acidic from the vinegar, slightly surfactant from the soap, and mild enough that it will not disturb the paint bond underneath whatever has settled on your wall. Take your cotton cloth and submerge it. Then wring it. This step matters more than people give it credit for. And I want to be clear about what wrung means here. It does not mean damp. It means wrung hard enough that when you hold the cloth up and press it against the back of your hand, no water runs. A wet cloth on a wall drives moisture into the seam between the paint and the dry wall beneath it. Over time, and sometimes not much time at all, that moisture finds a way under the paint film and lifts it from the inside. The wall starts to bubble and peel in places that had nothing to do with where you were cleaning. Wrung means dry to the touch, but still holding enough of the solution to do the work. That is the line you are looking for. Hold the cloth flat against the wall, your whole palm behind it, not your fingertips. Fingertips concentrate pressure into small points, and you will see those points in the paint later. Your whole palm spreads the pressure evenly, the way a wide brush spreads paint more smoothly than a narrow one. Now wipe, not in circles, not back and forth in the same spot. Move in one direction downward with a slow, deliberate stroke from the top of the section you are working to the bottom. One stroke, lift the cloth. Move to the next section. The reason is simple. Circular motion creates friction in every direction at once, and the repetition of back and forth across the same inch of paint is exactly how the sheen goes dull. A single downward stroke makes one clean pass and lets the chemistry do the lifting rather than your arm. When the cloth picks up dirt, and you will see it, the cloth will tell you, refold it to a clean face. Do not keep pressing a dirty cloth against the wall. The grime you already lifted will drag back across the surface, and the mild abrasive quality of dried dirt particles will scratch the paint the same way sandpaper would, just more slowly. Refold or rinse and wring again and keep going. Work in sections about the width of your arm span, top to bottom, moving across the wall in columns. Do not try to do the whole wall in one long connected motion. Work the section, check it in the light by stepping back a foot or two, then move on. The light check matters because your eye adjusts to what it has been looking at up close. Stepping back lets you see what the solution missed and what it cleaned without you having to go back over the same area twice. When a section is done, take a second cloth, dry, clean cotton, and make one more light pass over the same area. This is the rinse pass, and it serves 2 purposes. It lifts any residue from the vinegar solution before it can dry on the surface, and it tells you whether the wall has any spots that need a second round. If the dry cloth comes away with color on it, that area was not clean and needed more time with the solution. If it comes away clean, you are done with that section and you move on. For marks that have been there a while, a scuff along the baseboard, a handprint near the light switch that has been there through 2 winters, a grease shadow above the stove that has had time to cure into the paint. The method is the same, but the timing is different. Lay the damp cloth against the mark and hold it there for 30 to 45 seconds before you wipe. Let the solution sit against the stain and loosen it from underneath rather than trying to force it off with pressure. You will be surprised what comes away with patience that would not come away with effort. The vinegar is working on the bond between the grime and the paint surface, and that bond needs a moment to give. Near baseboards and around trim where the wall meets wood, switch to a smaller piece of cloth, something you can fold to a precise edge, and follow the line carefully. The paint near trim is often a different finish than the field of the wall, and it has frequently been touched up more times than the rest of the surface, which means the layers there are thicker and sometimes less uniformly bonded. Slow down near edges. It's important to be careful. One deliberate stroke along the trim line, cloth held so the edge of your fold follows the edge of the wood, and you will stay clean without bleeding solution into the baseboard or leaving a tide mark along the bottom of the wall. The whole process for an average room, 4 walls, standard ceiling height, moderately soiled, takes somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and a half, depending on how long the walls have gone between cleanings. That is not a long afternoon. That is less time than most people spend picking out a cleaning product at the hardware store, and the result is a painted wall that looks the way it did when fresh, without a single spot of missing sheen. I want to be straight with you about what this method will not do, because that matters more to me than leaving you with the impression that warm water and white vinegar solve everything. If a stain has had years to cure into the paint, cooking grease that has been heating and cooling through hundreds of meals, crayon or marker that was pressed into the surface with a child's full weight behind it, a water stain from a leak that ran down the wall and dried in place season after season, the solution will soften the edges of it and lift some of what sits on top, but it will not erase it entirely. What you will be left with is a faded version of the original mark rather than a clean wall. That is honest, and it's an important part of the process. In those cases, the question is not which cleaning method to use, but whether the wall needs a fresh coat of paint, and the answer is usually yes. A well-cleaned wall takes new paint far better than a wall that was never washed, so the cleaning is still worth doing first. It is just not the last step. Textured paint is a different problem. The kind with a rough or stippled surface, the finish that was popular in certain decades and that some builders still use in bathrooms and hallways, holds grime down in its valleys where a flat cloth cannot reach. The solution gets into those low points, but the cloth passes over them without making full contact. You will clean the peaks and leave the valleys, which can make a textured wall look patchy after washing rather than uniformly better. On heavily textured surfaces, a soft bristled brush, the kind used for dusting, with natural bristles that give rather than scratch, used in that same single downward stroke with very light pressure, will do more than a cloth alone. But I want you to know going in that textured walls are the hardest painted surface to clean without showing the work, and no method handles them perfectly. Walls that are already showing wear, paint that has started to chalk, surfaces where the finish has gone flat in patches from years of sunlight or humidity, anywhere the paint film has begun to separate from what is underneath, need to be painted, not cleaned. Washing a wall that is already failing accelerates the failure. The moisture gets into the separations, the cloth catches the edges of loose paint and peels them back slightly, and what was a tired wall becomes a damaged one. Run your hand across the surface before you start. Check it carefully. If paint comes off on your palm like a faint powder, or if you can see the surface bubbling or lifting anywhere, put the cloth down and plan for paint instead. Those are the limits. They are real, and they matter for your project. They are real, and they matter, and now you know them. The cleaning itself becomes much easier when it stops being an annual emergency and starts being a small regular habit. My mother did not wash the farmhouse walls because they were filthy. She washed them on a rhythm, spring before the windows opened for the season, fall before they closed again, because walls that are cleaned twice a year never have the chance to accumulate the kind of grime that requires pressure to remove. Twice a year, the whole house, every single wall, each room taking less than an hour. It's quick and effective. The solution costs next to nothing each time. The cloths wash and dry and get used again, and the walls stay in good condition for a painting cycle measured in decades rather than years. The rooms that need it most are the ones with the most air movement carrying particles. The kitchen above the stove and along the wall beside it, the hallway near the front door, the bathroom walls that collect soap vapor and humidity, and any room where someone smokes or where candles burn regularly. Those surfaces accumulate faster than bedroom walls or a quiet sitting room, and they reward more frequent attention. 3 times a year in the kitchen costs you 2 hours total and saves the paint. That is the arithmetic the old homesteaders ran without calling it arithmetic. They simply knew which parts of the house worked hardest and tended those parts more carefully. A small seasonal check takes less than 5 minutes. Walk the perimeter of each room with the light coming from an angle. A late afternoon window works perfectly, or a single lamp held low. The raking light shows you what straight-on looking hides, the grease shadow, the fingerprint colony near the doorframe, the long smear nobody noticed. Mark those spots in your mind, or mark them lightly with a small piece of painter's tape at the baseboard below them, and address them before they have another season to settle deeper. 5 minutes of looking saves 45 minutes of soaking. And here is the part that ought to sit with you for a moment. The wall cleaning product market is not small, it is huge. There are sprays and foams and concentrated solutions and pre-moistened wipes marketed specifically for painted walls, priced anywhere from $4 to $25 a bottle, with labels that promise they will clean without damaging your paint and remove tough stains and leave a protective finish behind. Some of them work tolerably. Some of them strip sheen faster than a rough cloth would. And every single one of them has to be replaced when the bottle runs out, which is the point. The bottle runs out and you are forced to buy more. You buy another one. That is how the industry works. That is the model. It's built for profit. White vinegar costs about $2 for a large bottle, and the same bottle does the kitchen, the bathrooms, the laundry, the drains, and every wall in the house. Plain dish soap you already have. The cotton cloth gets washed and used again until it falls apart, at which point you cut a square from an old shirt and keep going. There is no replacement cycle. It's simple and sustainable. There is no product loyalty. You use what works. There is no profit in what I'm telling you, and that is precisely why nobody selling wall products is going to tell it to you. My mother knew this the way she knew everything practical, not because someone taught her the theory of it, but because she had kept a home through tight seasons and loose ones, and she had learned early that the simplest solution that works is always worth more than the expensive one that also works. She kept a quart jar of white vinegar under the kitchen sink for as long as I can remember. Every spring, when the windows went up and the mountain air came through and you could smell the thaw in it, she would fill her bowl, wring out her cloth, and go around every room in the house. She was not in a hurry. She would stop at a window and look out at the garden coming back, then go back to the wall. She was not cleaning out of obligation. She was caring about it. There is a difference between those two things, and you can feel it in the result. A house that is kept that way, not perfectly, not expensively, but consistently and with care, holds its paint longer, breathes better, and feels clean in a way that a house only occasionally dealt with never quite manages. The women who raised me understood that. They passed it down not as instruction, but as habit, as the ordinary shape of a week, and the houses they kept are still standing. Warm water, white vinegar, a few drops of plain dish soap, and a wrung-out cotton cloth. That is the whole of it, and I want to walk back through the steps one more time so they sit clearly before you go find a wall to try it on. Start with your solution. 2 tablespoons of white vinegar to a bowl of warm water, 4 or 5 drops of dish soap stirred gently in. Wring the cloth until no water runs from it when you press it against your hand. Hold it flat against the wall with your whole palm behind it, not your fingertips. Wipe in one slow downward stroke. Lift the cloth, move to the next section. Refold to a clean face when the cloth picks up dirt. Work in columns the width of your arm span, top to bottom, and step back into the light every few sections to see what you have. Finish each section with a dry cloth pass to lift any residue and confirm the wall is clean. For older marks, hold the damp cloth against the spot for 30 to 45 seconds before wiping and let the vinegar do the loosening rather than your arm doing the pressing. That is the method. No scrubbing. No pressure, no product you have to replace when it runs out. Do the kitchen and the hallway first. Those walls earn their grime fastest, and they will show you the biggest change. Then the bathrooms, then wherever. Else the light reveals something you had been walking past without quite seeing. Twice a year as a rhythm keeps the work light and the paint sound. Once you have done it the right way, you will understand immediately why the old approach was always going to damage the surface. The difference between pressure and chemistry is visible the moment you wipe the first section clean and the sheen is still sitting exactly where it was. The rooms that surprise people most are the ones they assumed were clean. A bedroom wall that sees nothing but sleep and quiet air will still collect a season's worth of fine dust and skin oils that settle into the paint almost invisibly. The wall does not look dirty until the raking light shows you the difference between the cleaned section and the uncleaned one right beside it. That moment, and you will have it the first time, is the one that turns this from a task into a habit. You will not want to leave the rest of the wall looking the way it did before you started. Keep your vinegar under the sink where your mother or your grandmother kept hers, or where she would have kept it if she had known what it was for. Keep a stack of old cotton cloths folded beside it. Make the bowl, wring the cloth, and go around the house twice a year like the seasons call for it, because in a way they do. Spring cleaning is not a phrase that came from nowhere. It came from women who understood that a house needs attention on a rhythm, that the work is lighter when it is regular, and that a well-kept wall is a quiet form of respect for the home you live in. Now, I want to hear from you on something specific. Think about the wall in your house that has given you the most trouble, the one you have tried to clean before and either given up on or made worse in the process. Tell me about it in the comments. What room is it? What was the stain? And what did you try? I read every comment that comes in, and I learn from what you share as much as you learn from what I bring here. The comment that comes in from someone who had the same problem and solved it a different old way, that is the kind of thing that makes what we are doing here worth doing. If keeping your painted surfaces clean, sound, and lasting longer than they have any right to is the kind of practical home knowledge that belongs in your life, subscribe and stay. There is more coming that works the same way this does, simple, cheap, and built on the logic of people who could not afford to get it wrong. The subscribe button is right there, and it costs you nothing to keep this kind of help coming. The problem I'm thinking about for the next time we sit down together is related to this one. Walls clean up beautifully with the right method, but what about the woodwork around them? The baseboards, the door frames, the window trim that collects grime in its grooves and paint drips along its edges. Wood trim has its own logic, its own vulnerabilities, and its own old solutions that work better than anything sold in a bottle. That is what I want to get into, because a clean wall beside dirty trim is only half the room. Until then, keep your cloth wrung dry, your vinegar close, and your walls the way the people who built your house intended them, standing clean without being scrubbed to death. The old way asks less of you and gives more back. It always has.